So we've looked at a framework for incorporating multimedia projects into the classroom, looking at how we can use images, audio, and video to document, demonstrate, and display student learning. Make sure you check out those 3 videos if you haven't watched them already. I want to help you plan your next project. So the first thing I want you to do is to consider, what's coming up in your classroom. What's the focus of your next unit? Are there any key questions that your students need to be able to answer as they investigate these things? Is there something coming up that has proven difficult to teach in the past? Maybe it's just a very abstract concept that you should design some new lessons and content to improve. Is there something coming up that students have historically struggled to grasp? Maybe it's a difficult concept, topic, maybe it's just not very interesting, and so adding a new project in there might increase the likelihood that students will be successful. And then, sometimes you just kind of get into a rut. You've been doing the same thing for a long time, and you need to mix things up. So maybe if you're a math teacher, it's time to take a break from the daily practice and do something a little bit different. If you use a lot of textbook resources in your classroom, maybe it's time to mix things up and have students design something rather than just reading and discussing the chapter. I'll leave that up to you. You know your class, you know your students better than I, but think about what's coming up in the future, and it's best if you think several weeks in advance so that you have time to kind of put the pieces together. You're not stressed and crunched for time. So give that some thought first, and then also take a stock, evaluate what do you have already, what resources have you created, what worksheets, videos do you have. It's always easier to start and modify from something that exists than starting from scratch from a blank slate. If you don't have anything, you might want to spend a little bit of time just looking at what's out there so you can mix and match and maybe take ideas from several different sources and combine them together into something that's unique to you. So, just a couple of examples to get you thinking, if your students have ever done a physical poster project in your classroom, that's something that can be very easily adapted for a multimedia project. You could turn that poster project into a video project very, very easily. So you may have something like that already to go. If you teach in a classroom that is very hands-on, so I taught science, we did a lot of lab activities, you might think about, what physical assignments are coming up and how can I add a multimedia digital component to it. This works great for art, for science, for any hands-on manipulative activity, even physical education. I never want to replace students being up and active with something technology related, but perhaps you could have students document their physical fitness or share their journey or their progress in a creative way. So give that some thought as well. If you teach in a heavy writing subject area, language arts, social studies, world language, think about the assignments that are coming up. If they're typically a written assignment, is there a way that we could turn that writing project into a video, into a podcast, into some audio recording? Can we enhance it with images more than we've done in the past? So look at what you have. I don't want you to have to start from scratch. Much easier to modify from something that's existing. We all have worksheets. If you have worksheets from your textbook, take a look at those. How can I modify these, make these more interesting? Those worksheet activities typically fall into the documentation or demonstration category. So you have to think about, how to modify those. Over the course of this course, I'm going to be talking specifically about various tools that you can use to do that. We just need to pick the topic and the focus for right now. The last resource I'm going to give you is my multimedia project planning guide. So the link is available below this video or in Google Classroom. And this is just a sample to kind of help you gather your thoughts. This is not supposed to be stressful. It's just a place to gather your thoughts together. Let me go ahead and pull it up so I can show it to you. So here's the multimedia project planning guide, and I just did a sample. So first thing you're gonna do is just identify the topic, the unit that you're studying. So I filled this out, say, yeah, we're doing plants. Plants was a unit I never really enjoyed teaching. Plants are kind of boring, they don't do too much. And so I was always looking at like, how can I make this more interesting for myself and for my students? So I always had a list of key objectives or questions that my students needed to be able to answer to successfully complete the unit. So I selected one of those questions, compare and contrast dicots and monocots. Not a very interesting topic. This is going to be a demonstration activity, so they just need to demonstrate that they know the difference between those two types of plants. This is going to be super short, kind of a 1 to 2 class period thing, which works well with those demonstrate activities. And then I already have a PowerPoint and guided notes, and I think that a Venn diagram or some kind of graphic organizer would be ideal for this. So with that, I can turn that idea into a project idea with guidelines for my students. That's what we'll work on next. I would recommend that you come up with 3 to 5 ideas. As part of this course, you're going to do a minimum of 1. I'm going to help you with that. Hopefully more, but certainly at least one of them. It would be great if you had some that fell into the document, some into the demonstrate, and some into the display category. You'll have to decide which ones are of greatest importance and priority for you. We'll try to get as many of them done as we can.